Welcome to the first video in EmbroideryWare training. This video is probably the most important video to understand because everything in EmbroideryWare is built off of these concepts. EmbroideryWare is a program that everything is built off of the base lines and curves that you draw, which form paths. These paths can be used for anything in EmbroideryWare. They can be copied and you can change them into different things. But in this video, we're just going to talk about the paths being composed of lines and curves and how to edit these curves and do various things with these curves. It's very important that you understand this because everything in EmbroideryWare, and I'll keep on repeating this throughout this video, everything in EmbroideryWare is based off of just two different types of graphics, lines and curves. And everything that you do will be based off of these lines and curves. Again, it's important to know this because you can use this to your advantage. Once you understand this base concept, everything is based off of these lines and curves and it'll start making sense. So let's get started. So if you've already opened EmbroideryWare, you'll have a screen like this, and if you went up to the training, step-by-step training, you would have chosen this video here, and it would have put the EmbroideryWare into this mode where we just have a few controls listed. We already have a drawing on the screen, and you can get that by hitting the new button. It should already be opened. When you open the program, it should already open to a blank screen. And we'll talk about these things as we go, these panes here. But let's first talk about lines and curves. So in order to draw in EmbroideryWare, you use these two basic types, lines and curves. And so to start, we'll just start with drawing a square. So we'll choose a line and we'll just roughly draw the square on the screen. And you'll notice when you choose a command, it has a instruction bar down here that will tell you what to do. So we're going to choose a line endpoint by clicking, and you'll notice that we'll have now a red line that is going to show us where the line will go. So we click again, we've drawn one line, click again, drawn one line, click again, and we've drawn one line. And then we click. Now, at this point, we're done. We want to just have this square. So you could either click OK over here, or you could hit your right mouse button and OK will show up in this pop-up. So we'll just click OK here, or you could click it here, or if you want, you can press enter on the keyboard. Once you've done that, congratulations, you've drawn your first embroidery in EmbroideryWare. I'm just going to get rid of this grid right now so that we can see these lines better. And so here is the grid lines. You can turn them on and off here with this little tool. Or under the Show Hide menu, you can turn it off here too. The Show Hide menu shows you all the different things that will be displayed on the screen. Sometimes you want to turn these things on and off. If you don't see anything when you start EmbroideryWare, you might have some of these not turned on. So at this point, we have the path points be displayed, the stitch lines, stitch points, stitch start and stop, jump lines, curve handles, curve point tangents, control point tangents. It's not that important to know what these are just yet. I just want to show how you draw. So let's do this again. This time we'll draw a triangle. So we chose the line tool, we clicked, 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 and clicked. And we right mouse click and say end drawing, or press OK over here, or press the enter key on your keyboard. Okay, so we have two embroidery objects on here. We have a square and we have a triangle. Now if you notice here in this screen here, we have the square and the triangle. These are called embroidery objects, graphic objects, and this list will just keep on populating as you do your design. Now we've drawn two of these. Now what we want to do is we want to start manipulating them or understanding how to manipulate them. So I'm going to just click the triangle and I'm going to delete that because we're just working on the square for now. This is the delete button. If you want to select something, you can click that to select it. See how there's little points that show up? You can also select it by using this button called select or keyboard shortcut A on your keyboard. And once you have that selected, you can just click on the graphic and it will select also. So you can click it here to select it, or you can select it on the screen. Manipulating the square. So to manipulate the square is defined by these endpoints that we clicked. So we make sure the square is selected, and then under this menu, which is the point functions menu, there will be various things where we'll be able to manipulate those points. Now, the points are these items that we drew. It's not the line. That line is considered part of the graphic. The endpoints under the point menu, it only modifies the endpoints. So we click, the easiest thing first to talk about is just edit points. So you click edit points and the instructions will say click on the point to modify it. Now, so when we get over the point, it'll turn red. And if it's red, then we can click on it. So we click on it and we don't click and drag. We just click on it to activate it. Right now I'm not clicking anymore. I'm just dragging. I'm just moving the mouse. So let me show that again. We click on the point. We don't hold the mouse down, the button. We just click it to activate it. And then it can be activated and we can move it wherever we want. Now, I have my hand off the mouse right now. So this is a little different than most graphic programs that actually have you click, hold the mouse button, drag. That is a way that a lot of graphic programs do it, but what I've found is when you get a tablet and a tablet pen, sometimes it's much easier just to click and then move and click. And once you get a tablet with a tablet pen, you find that you can draw 3 times faster. But we won't really go into that just yet now. I'm just showing you in EmbroideryWare the fundamental difference between this program and a lot of other programs is you don't click and hold the mouse button and drag. You just click to activate the button or the endpoint, and then you click where you want it. Now over here we have this little magnet. This magnet is actually causing these points to snap to the grid lines that we had shown before. Sometimes it's good to turn that off so that you can get things exactly the way you want. So you just click to activate the point and click again to show where you want the point. Over here you'll notice that this point is not connected to that end, to the start point. You'll know where the graphics start by this hatch and this green icon, and then this other hatched end icon. Now we only have one graphic on here, so this just shows the start of the embroidery design and the end of the embroidery design. When we have another graphic that we draw, you'll notice that this will change such that now this no longer has a hatch in it. This has a hatch in it for the start of the embroidery design, but this doesn't because this isn't the end of the entire embroidery design. It's just the end of item 1. And this is the end of the embroidery design, which is the end of item 2. Now you notice the green starting point isn't hatched, so that's not the start of the entire design. That's just the start of this particular graphic. Now these two are this way, when you get designing, it's important to know where your last point is. If we click this so we hide this, so it's not in the screen, you'll see that now the hatched mark is at the end of the first graphic. And that can be helpful when you're doing pathing, which is the ordering of how you're doing your embroidery design. We'll talk about that much later in a different video. What we're focusing mainly on here is understanding how you manipulate the lines and curves. This is the fundamental thing to learn because everything in EmbroideryWare is based off of these, and if you understand some of the manipulations you can do with the lines and curves, you can create some really good embroidery. It's much easier if you understand what we're doing here. So we have these lines and curves. Okay, so we've already shown you how you modify just a point by just moving it around. Now there's other things you can do to this to modify this graphic. We can actually move this graphic by choosing the move, and then again the instructions say click the starting point for move. We don't hold the mouse button down, and we just move it. Okay, so we click and then click to move the graphic. Now let me turn the grid back on so you can see that it's actually moving relative to the grid. Now the grid represents the hoop of what you would want for your design. So in this case we have a hoop that is in metric, and it's 60 by 60 by 60 by 60 with the 0 point being in the center. Now you'll see up here, this is basically a ruler. In this case it's in millimeters, but if you change to a different hoop type, it'll be in different units. But we won't talk about hoop types yet. We'll have a special video for that, just so you can understand all this. So what we're still concentrating on is just the graphics. Again, it's the most important thing. So we have been able to move these points and move the graphic around. There's other things you can do, just like in any other program. You can duplicate what you've done, and you'll notice over here there will be a second graphic. Now it's been duplicated, so it's exactly in the same spot. So if we use the move again, you can see that our graphic now has been moved over. And so now we have two graphics. Again, we have the embroidery starting point, which goes over here, goes to the next graphic, and then it ends here. Now you notice there's this black kind of dashed line. What is that? That is a jump line, so that's what would be jumped. Now, if you notice, these are all the same color, so to change the color of the graphic, which will end up being the color of your thread, you just select them, and then choose the color. So in this case, they're going to be pink. Okay, if I want another color for the other one, second one, it's going to be now red. Okay, so let's delete one of these graphics and work with the pink graphic. All right, so we've shown you how to manipulate the points, how to move the graphic. You've seen how to delete it. You've seen how to select it. So what other options do we have here? We have some alignment options. Now I'm just going to describe one of them. The rest of them will be described in another video so that you can understand what they do. But let's just choose an align point in X option. Now what we're doing is we're able to align these points in the X direction. The X direction is left to right, and the Y direction is up and down. So the instructions say click on a point to align to in X. So let's say I wanted to line this point to this point. I'm going to click this point as the one I want to align to, and it's going to say click on the point to align to in X. Okay, click on a point to align in X. So this is the point I actually want to align to that point, and you can see that it is now aligned in X, and it's vertical. If I wanted to make this line horizontal, I would choose align point in Y. So then I would click the point I want to align to in Y, and I'm going to click on the point I want to align to in Y. The next tool we want to discuss is the align point X and Y. So in this case, we wanted this point to come over here. The instructions say click on a point to align in X and Y. We're going to click that, and it's going to ask which point to align to. So we're going to click that, and the point goes over there. So then the last point that we're going to do is we're going to align this one to this one, and that's going to be aligned in the Y. So we choose click align point in Y. It says which point do we want click on a point to align in Y, and then click on the what point to align to. And now we got a square again. Another thing that we're going to discuss is aligning points to the grid. So in the grid here, we can either turn the magnet on, which is this item here, and we can go ahead and edit points, and we can actually, do you see how the points just snap to discrete points? We'll talk about how to set those discrete points in the hoop video later, but right now you can see that it just snaps to points. So we got this snap to this point, this snap to that point, etc. Like that. Now let's say that we wanted it to snap to this point, but we didn't want to move it over there. We can just say align point to grid. At this point, the instructions say click on the point to align to the grid, which would be this one. And then we basically get approximately where we want to be in there, and the point will be aligned to the grid. So we just keep on doing this. You can see what it does. That one I got off a little bit. Let's zoom in. To zoom in, you can move the mouse wheel up and down, or you can use these pluses and minuses. Now you notice when we get to a certain size, we end up getting more grid points. These are the actual points that we get snapped to when we set up our hoops. You got negative here. You can also type in a number and hit enter, and it will go to that size. You can also go to 100% and 600%. Now you probably wonder, why do we have 600%? Well, 600% is generally a good size to be looking at your embroidery when you will look at the fine details of it. I'm going to turn this off, the grid, so you can see these little points. You can see the stitch points. And when we're at 100, you don't really see that well. Where am I going with this? Well, you do see them. But anyway, so you got 100 and 600 as just defaults. We also have different ways to zoom around this thing. If we wanted to zoom around this point here, we could choose zoom to area. When you do that, it says click top left point for zoom, and then the second instruction is click the bottom right portion for zoom, and it zooms into there. This right here will zoom all, so whatever is in the design will zoom to. This one will zoom to the selected item. So for example, if I ended up having another triangle on the screen, and I had this selected, and I chose zoom to selected, it would just zoom to that. If I want to zoom to the whole design, I just say zoom all, and it zooms to all. Okay, so we talked about some of the alignment functions. Most of these we'll talk about a little later. But next, what we're going to talk about, so we have lines. We've done the lines, but what if we want a curve? So in a curve, you just choose the next tool, which is a curve. In this case, you click a curve endpoint, and then the next point is what's called a control point. It's a round, has a round endpoint, and then you click an endpoint again. You keep on going, click again, keep on going, click again. Now let's say I wanted to switch to a line at this point, and I wanted this all to be one in a graphic. Just press the line tool, and you can do the line. Let's say you want to go back to the curve. You just press the curve tool, and it goes back to the curve. Now if you hold your mouse over here, you'll see, and it doesn't show on the video, I don't think, it'll show you a keyboard shortcut you can use. So if you wanted to switch from line to curve, you could use the space bar on your keyboard to toggle. So now we're in line mode. Now we're in curve mode. Or you could press L or C. So L to go to line, and C to go to curve. So you could do those shortcuts. The shortcuts are listed in the manual also. This is kind of a mess, which will bring up this next point. And let's say I just wanted to look at this curve here. I can start deleting points. So if you know there's a delete endpoint here, also under here, there's a delete endpoint. This is the curve manipulation menu. At this point, we're going to, well, this is it's add and subtract curve items. So we're going to go ahead and just delete some of these points. So you just delete the points by clicking the delete endpoint tool. You just click the endpoints you want to get rid of. So we're just going to get rid of these endpoints. So all that we have is our first curve. Now, how do you manipulate curves once you've drawn them? Just like you did with before, where you can edit the points. In this case, the control points control the curvature of the curve, and the endpoints control the ends of the curve. Now let's say you say, okay, I'm done. I want to add to this curve because I really didn't finish. I want to do some more things. You can add to the curve by selecting the curve and then using the add buttons here, which would add lines, which are also here. Or let's say we want to add more curves. So in this case, there's two different ways to add a curve. If we add a curve before, it will allow us to put a curve before the green start point. If we want to add a curve after the stop point, we choose that. So let's do a curve after. And we click the curve. And you notice what will come out will appear to be just like a line. But it's a line basically with two control points. We really don't know how to do this curve yet. So we're just going to do this first. Hit the right mouse button to end. And we're going to make these points tangent by actually editing the points and pulling the control lines out. Now, if the control lines are aligned with each other like this, essentially the curve is tangent at that point. Now you're thinking, oh gosh, making all these lines lined up is kind of difficult. You can basically add a tangent to the line by doing this, by choosing the tangent tool. And now the curve is tangent. So you just can pull these points, you can pull this point, and it remains tangent. To remove the tangent, you just choose the remove tangent tool, and you remove the tangent.